Hey Derek, how are you?
Good. So it's like to be talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Quite a poster collection you have there and lunch boxes. Man, it looks like my childhood in that room.
Well, I tried to replicate. Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because that's my first question is about that. But yeah, I wish I could hang all the posters I have. I would like I don't want to rotate because these are the three I'm comfortable with. So I can't do it. But like my question to you, my first one was: Were you and I are exactly the same age? Exactly. I
No
think
way.
you're a little younger. So you and I both have monumental birthdays coming up.
Yeah.
What is your take on that? And what is your getting a little deep here? What is your take on aging?
Um, I guess at some point you apparently hit a milestone where you look back and you wish you were young again. I haven't hit that yet. I love
Mm.
where I'm at. My kids are a great age. Everybody's doing really well. I love what I'm doing as a career. I'm very happily married. Yeah, I couldn't be in a better place. So, knock on wood, I feel really lucky right now where I'm at. What's your take? How do you feel at this stage?
Similar, but like I have like two kids. I had them late. I have a
Okay.
3-year-old and a 3-month old. The way I look at it is, and this is like I'm going to sound like a lunatic, but I'm like I look at it and I say, oh, I hope I have at least 20 years left. I hope I have at least 25. Like I'm very neurotic about that. Like I always like I'm never like I mean I do enjoy life. I love life, but like I
Yeah.
there's a part of me that always wakes up and says, just get 30 more years. And it's just like it's like a head game I play with myself. And I don't know. I wish I wasn't thinking like that, Andrew?
Yeah, you won't have much time to think like that. You have a 3-year-old and a 3-month old. You won't.
Yeah.
You'll be busy for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. I have to say you early on, you're a rock and roll kid, right? So, who are your influences early on, Andrew, when it comes to rock and roll, right? So who's the band, who's the singer that was like, man, that's the one.
So my earliest recollection of a song, I remember hearing "Jump," the Van Halen "Jump" on the radio, and being blown away that the same guy who was playing that incredible guitar solo was playing this amazing keyboard solo, Eddie Van Halen. And I remember my mother saying she'd buy me the cassette if I did chores around the house, and she taught me how to clean toilets and all that fun stuff. So I was pretty little, but it was worth it to get my hands on that. So I loved that. I have a funny one. There was a TV show when I was really little. I think I was too young to watch it, but I remember hearing it in the other room when my parents were watching TV. Greatest American Hero. And that
Yes.
theme song by Mike Post, I loved that theme song. And that, again, one of the first things I learned how to play on the piano. And yeah, very cool. How about you? How did
Well,
you?
before I answer that, like that's a really cool thing that you were playing that on the piano. Like how awesome is it to play a song that you revere? Like, and it's going to be that one. And it also makes a big cameo in Seinfeld on his answering machine.
That's
But
right. That's right.
let me ask you this: when it comes to Van Halen, David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Ooh, I have to say David Lee Roth because that was the origin for me.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, both super talented. They had a lot. They both had great albums, but yeah, R.I.P. Eddie. He was amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
sad to have him go.
one of the best ever. And it's funny that you bring up Greatest American Hero because my dad and I used to sit and watch that show with William Catt. And William Catt has been on the show, so it's like I
Oh,
was pouring.
amazing.
Yeah, I was gushing to him like you have no idea. I mean, he's heard it 1,000 times before, but like I was being sincere. And yeah, it's those moments, Andrew, that we bond to that like fuel us down the road. I mean, you're much more successful than I am, but I think we were fueled by kind of the same things. You know what I'm saying? Like that same culture, those same names, those same shows, those same movies.
100%. You know what's really funny is the BMI Music Association does a dinner every year, and I've been lucky enough to meet Mike Post, who wrote that theme song,
Oh, great.
at that dinner. And you go up to him and you say, "Dude, you have no idea how this impacted my life." And it's funny because I don't think there was any way to actually express to him how huge a turning point and fork in the road it was for me.
Right.
But he was very gracious. But I don't think there was any way for me to really explain, like, no, seriously, this sent me on this path. I'm sure John Williams has that experience too, where people just come up to him and go, "Man, we're in this career because of you." And he's like, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's 10 times a day for him.
Was Mike Post Hill Street Blues too, Andrew? Because I feel like Mike posted all those like that.
I think so. I think he was, wasn't he Law and Order? I think
He was a
did all
lot. I
that
feel
stuff.
like
He did a lot. Yeah.
yeah.
Super talented
Hill
guy.
Street Blues is a wonderful piano song to hear. Like that was such a soothing song for me. Like, and I've said this before. Like that's the great thing about intros. I feel like in the 80s and 90s that might be a tad bit lost nowadays.
Oh,
Not completely,
totally.
but like
Yeah.
the intro was as important as the show. Like when you were
Yeah.
watching Greatest American Hero, you were tuning in for that intro. Like now it's like they insult all composers who are skip intro. Like what? I'm not going to skip it. Like what the hell did you work so hard for that I want to skip it? I don't know. I feel like there's such a disrespect to composers now. Like I don't know.
You know, we went through a period where themes kind of went away. So
Yes.
maybe that was in line with that. I'm not sure. It's funny. I had a director once tell me, I want to score like Godfather, and go watch The Godfather and look at Nino Rota's score and think about writing a score like that. So you go and you watch The Godfather, and when they arrive in Italy, there's a 4-minute music montage of them getting to Italy where the theme plays. There's no sound effects. There's no dialogue. It's just music. When does that happen anymore in films? So it's funny.
4 minutes? Yeah, never.
No,
never that long.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's funny. It's different medium. Like even themes. I think when I'm writing themes, like I'm working on a big action film right now, and the pace of movies
Atlas,
is so much. Atlas. Yeah. Amazing film. Really good. Really excited for it to come out. And but the pace of everything is so fast now that the themes have to be designed in such a way that they can make a statement and go away, make a statement and hide. So it's a very different medium, I think, than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, and no pressure. Go make me a Godfather equivalent. No pressure there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned John Williams, and I was either watching or reading an interview you did, and you were big on the E.T. and John Williams soundtrack. I think if I had to ask you who your influences were, I think you have to answer that. But I went back and I re-listened. I rewatched a lot of these movies, but I re-listened to just the E.T. score. That's a pretty freaking amazing score. Like I know it's everyone's like, oh, that's an obvious thing to say. Well, what it's not, because I feel like the music has aged ridiculously well. Like I don't remember it being that good. Like I don't remember it being that deep in it. Like it's not like cheesy and kind of dorky like some of those 80s. It's a really like I don't want to say deep, but it's a really emotional score.
Yeah, it's unabashed in its emotional content, which I think we are. I think audiences are very in on all of the little manipulative elements of storytelling in film and TV now. So it's much more sophisticated in that they know, oh yeah, okay, we know what this music means. We know what that music means. We know you're trying to make us feel like this. So you have to be very subtle and walk a little more of a tightrope in being emotional in music. But John Williams always had a gift. And I think it's a combination that he's able to do it in a way that has integrity and authenticity. And also, I think the audiences are actually, they want to be moved in that way. So as much as they're afraid of things being corny, I think they really enjoy when things are moving. Love Actually is a very emotional score. People love that movie. Serendipity, great Peter Chelsom film, very emotional score by Alan Silvestri, and people love it. Like I think you have to be aware of the pitfalls and how you have to be sophisticated in how you do it. But I think audiences want a very emotional experience from the music.
That's a really good point. And think about how many movies that Williams, that Thomas Newman, and that Hans Zimmer set the table for. Like without their scores, it is not nearly the same movie. Like I always feel like this, and I feel like people who have podcasts need to kind of focus on composers and cinematographers, because think about all those classic movies, or even think about the stuff that you've done. Take out the composer, and it's not nearly as good. And I just feel like composers deserve, because it's that secret sauce that they bring to the show or the movie, whatever they do. I don't know. I just feel like they're such an integral part of what we're seeing every day now, Andrew.
It can be. There's a flip side to that, Derek, which is music can really make a scene. It can also break a scene. So you can watch something, and like years ago, I've worked on a film with Donald Sutherland that he was in, and he directed and he produced. Actually, he co-directed it with Brad Payton, who did Atlas, who I'm doing Atlas with now.
Mm.
And I was able to spend a fair bit of time with Donald and talk about acting, and that was a pinch me moment to get to know him and work with him and hear stories about his craft and how he works. And I had the conversation with him where I said, how do you feel when a composer comes in and tips the scale of your performance one way or the other? Because I'd sort of always imagined he'd be annoyed by that because he's being so precise and measured in what his emotional vulnerability is as an actor in a scene. And he said that he actually takes into account what the music will probably be doing in that moment. So he allows a certain buffer to allow that to do it. But I was very surprised because he said he loves score over his performances, and he actually feels they're not complete oftentimes without that. So to have an actor thinking about that is amazing, because as composers, we sit all by ourselves and we're sort of often feel like the forgotten party member.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've learned over the course of, I want to say 7 years of interviewing composers, is that I wasn't ready for the isolation part of it. I wasn't expecting that. Like, as somebody who loves movies, and I wasn't expecting the amount of time that you guys spend alone. I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that. That's something that people don't consider, I think, when they hear music, when they hear scores and the time invested in it. Huh, Andrew?
Yeah, something has happened for me along the way, though, which is amazing, is that I have found these incredible musicians, an amazing assistant, a really good programmer, an amazing engineer. I found people, and it feels a bit like a band. Even though I'm bringing the creative content, it feels like I get to work with really incredible people, and it makes it really fun. And
Yeah.
they're people that I trust. I can say, hey, I just wrote this. What do you think? And get really honest and smart, cerebral feedback on. So it's not as lonely as it used to be, but certainly it has its moments. And sometimes you have to remember that as a creative person, it's an outlet for life and for feelings. And you have to remember to make time for real life and real feelings, because that's the fuel for your music. So, I just, right before this podcast, I'm in LA, went and did a hike up Echo Mountain here behind me in the hills. And it kind of flushes the system a little bit in terms of your creative mind, and you sort of get a second wind and get ready to go again. So it's important to try to not be as closed off as often the job demands.
Yeah, it's a good answer. And ironically enough, the last composer I spoke to, which was my last interview, Andrew, I forget his last name, Gran Turismo, he was talking about burnout and how very real that was, and how it was so affecting him at one point that he wasn't enjoying movies anymore or the music anymore. And he found his way back, but it's kind of scary to hear that, right? It's just a frightening concept to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not sure it's the music that's the burnout. There's a lot of politics, and making a movie involves so many different variables. And as a composer, you like to think of that you're trying to make the best music, but it's often the best music is different than what the movie needs. Yeah. So you're trying to make the best music that still complements the movie and tells a hybrid story. You don't want the audience to go, hated the movie, loved the music. That's not a compliment. You want them to go, I don't remember anything other than I was really moved by the experience, and I can hum something I couldn't hum an hour ago. So right. It's it is, burnout's definitely a thing. It's funny though, because right before you burn out, there's this sweet spot that is when you're very prolific and creative, and you sort of, I hit it on this movie a couple of weeks ago, and you sit down and you just, the stuff kind of starts flowing, and it's such a rush, it's such an adrenaline rush that you recognize you don't want to lay off it because you want to ride the wave into shore, but you also don't want to paddle too hard because you'll burn out. So it's a fine line.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you though, music, it may not, I get what you're saying about, I didn't like the movie, but I love the score. I'm gonna tell you this: good movies are made better by a great score. Like I just feel that way. I feel like so. The next name I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to get there in a second. But knowing we were going to speak, and I know you know this next man, and I'm curious to hear what you're going to say. But he won an Academy Award for those listening for this movie, and I was watching it today. I got sidetracked during my research for your life, and I'm watching Life of Pi, and Irfan Khan is talking about the tiger he lost, and I'm probably get emotional talking about it now. But like the score that Michael Dana put forth in this movie at the end of Life of Pi, the last 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, this movie came out 11 years ago. I'm talking to you now about to sob. That's the power of a composer, Andrew. That's the power.
100%, and you're talking about one of the best of our generation. Michael's
one of the
incredible.
most underrated composers on the planet.
Yeah, but if so, only because of his dedication to what he's doing. He's not trying to be a rock star. He's trying to move you the way you've just described.
Yes.
And I worked with him for years, as you know. I'm proud to say he was my mentor starting out, and I learned so much from him. But one of the biggest things I learned is about restraint, emotional restraint, hold back, and then when you finally do let go. Someone once compared it to a linebacker in football. They said, if you meet this big, refrigerator linebacker who's really tough, and every time you talk to them, they cry. That's one thing. But if you get to know them as a very stoic individual, and then after a month or two, something moves them and you see a tear, that moves you. That really moves you.
Yes. And it's just, and he won an Academy Award for that. And something tells me he wasn't seeking it. Like there's people that take roles, and I feel like because they're maybe not looking for an Academy Award, but know it could push them in that direction. Something tells me that wasn't even on Michael's anywhere near his thought process.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. No. And I mean luckily I was working with him when he was working in the beginning of his career, when he was working with Ang Lee. So they had worked together many years, and a few times gone their separate ways on different projects. And they really only wanted to work together on the projects that they both felt were really powerful, where they could really make a difference. So it was nice. Like, to me, I see that film and his work on that film as being justifiably rewarded with the Oscar, but it also feels like a bit of a lifetime achievement award to complement all of their other work too, because they'd had done several films up to that, which I think Life of Pi benefited from that long-standing relationship.
Oh, 100%. And Moneyball is just as good. That's a great
It's great.
Story.
Yes. Great.
Another
film.
Underrated. Yes. He's a really good man. And boy, you couldn't have asked for a better mentor.
Oh my gosh. So lucky. And his brother too. I did a lot of work with his brother, also an incredible mentor, Jeff Dana. So I was so, I went to school, I did piano lessons, I did courses. I never learned anything like I learned from those two guys. So
terrific talent. One of the all-time greats. So let's talk about let's get into your career. Multiple projects with Taylor Sheridan, Lioness and Mara. What I love about your entire filmography is you are so talented and so eclectic in how you're not the same score for everything you do. And we're going to touch on a few for those listening or watching, how you even like Lioness and Mayor of Kingstown, like you couldn't have asked for two different scores and the way you approach each project. Talk a little about that, Andrew, because Mayor of Kingstown has this horror element to it, kind of like a little vibey horror, and Lioness, we're going to get into how To the Afterlife has. Oh my God, I was listening to that on a loop today. What a wonderful track that is. And it's great, Andrew, to read what people say on YouTube about that score. Like, people were flipping out on how much they loved it. But I don't know where you want to. I don't know where you want to start. I threw a lot at you, so wherever you want to dissect.
Well, let's start with Taylor. I have a good friend, Andrea Von Forster, who's a music supervisor. She is Taylor's only music supervisor. She does everything with him, and she, I guess, one day played him maybe 4 or 5 years ago some strings, some cues I'd written. He loves strings. He loves orchestra. He's all for being very measured in being emotional, but he wants to be emotional. He wants to move his audiences, and he's not afraid to make big moves. So we connected during COVID on a project that didn't end up working out. but he said, schedule wise, this one won't happen, but the next one might work. And it was Mayor of Kingstown. And I don't think it was originally intended to film in Canada, but somehow I was in Canada for COVID. That's where I'm from with my family. And suddenly I hear they're filming in Toronto and in a town, ironically, called Kingston, not Kingstown, but Kingston.
The way I pronounced it, yeah.
Yeah. So he suddenly he's in town. COVID, he's done his quarantine, which is so weird to think of that now. But he's done his 2 weeks quarantine. We get together, and I have this amazing experience where he's a 10-minute drive from my house. I can go to set. We can sit. We can talk music, and between takes, like they were doing setups, and he and I would say, kind of thinking this here or that here and different sounds. And he sent me all the scripts, and he said, just write a bunch of music. Write what you feel. It doesn't matter where it goes. Just write what you feel. And I sent it to him, and he loved it. And he said, you know what, just send me a whole bunch of sweet ideas, and like sweet, SUITE ideas, musical suites. And we're going to temp it into the show. We'll edit with it. And they didn't edit with any other music. Normally you've temp music from all different shows. And he said, no, we're just going to go with yours. So Michael Friedman, who was his producer, and Chad Galster, who's his editor, just started putting my music to picture, and it started getting conversations going and informing what we were doing. So it was amazing. It was an amazing experience because it was very freeing, because normally I sit there and I go, okay, we have a theme that does this and a theme that does this. And I'm sort of breaking it down in a logical way. And on this, I was just sort of free flowing and just writing and going, this is kind of the vibe I'm feeling. And some of the ideas were very abstract and just some of them were even based on imaginary scenes. Like when I thought about the show, I was reminded of this scene in Cool Hand Luke where
classic.
All the prisoners are working on the side of the road, Paul Newman, and they've got shovels, and it's all like this work. And I was sort of imagining what I would have written for that scene as sort of the group of prisoners, all like the chain gang, humming something. So I one of the first things I did is wrote the theme song for the show of just this humming motif. And Taylor just jumped on it and said, yep, that's it. That captures sort of the historical feel of the American prison system. And so it's so fun because it reminds me a little bit of being a teenager. And I'm taking this metaphor from a director I worked with once, but that you're having so much fun, you think the parents are going to break into the room and tell you to go to bed. Like it's that kind of vibe. Like it's just So we worked on that together. Mayor of Kingstown and the vibe was really born out of the reverb and the sound of the prison where they shot. So they shot in a decommissioned prison in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And I was able to get in there with a bunch of musicians and start recording drums and recording these medieval instruments. And we had a couple of days in there. And in the first session, we do these sort of 3-hour chunks before we take a break. While we were playing and I was conducting the drummers, I took a mallet and I just hit the wall of this a gate with bars on it, and the entire wall of steel resonated and went this amazing. And we all kind of stopped and looked at each other, and the two drummers got up and went, and they started hitting, and we spent the rest of the time just playing the prison like an instrument.
Very creative.
It was so cool, and it really became a signature sound of the score, in that it's not a melody or a little motif, but so many of the themes around Mike, Jeremy Renner's character, are in that space. They have that resonance on it. And it's really symbolic for the idea that he was in prison for a long time, and everything he hears still echoes in that penitentiary, in that prison yard, in those huge stone walls. And he can't escape it. So his life is really a prison. He can't escape the city. He can't escape the life. But metaphorically, in the music, he can't escape that resonance and that reverb.
Right. And how good is Taylor to let you kind of do your thing? Like, I feel like that's a really, as a composer, that's all you can really ask for, right? Is for somebody to have that attitude.
Well, what's really cool is he's found the fine line between letting me do my thing, but he's really involved. Like I'm
Yeah, of
always
course.
bouncing things off of him, and he's going, "Yes, more like that, or more like this." And he loves music, and he's actually incredibly smart about music, and very he has a great musical education, great references. He plays guitar, plays other musical instruments, so he's been a great sounding board, but definitely it's been a run with this idea, take it and run. And we have an upcoming project that isn't announced yet that we're collaborating on, and it's you know we're both so like the plan is let's get together and we're just going to play with musical ideas and bring a bunch of stuff, and we're going to go to where we're filming, and it's really fun. Like I feel like it's one of those school projects that you suddenly realize this isn't just for marks, this is a blast. So
Is it a show or movie, or can you not say?
yeah, a series. Yeah,
Oh,
another series. Yeah.
oh, very cool. You know what? It's funny because I believe that Taylor's that way about music, because when you look at his work, like Hell or High Water, I think it was Nick Cave.
Yeah. Oh, great score.
Yeah, everybody he chooses, like, you are perfect for Lioness, you're perfect for Mayor of Kingstown. It's like amazing how, like, and I don't know who did Wind River, which is another like a really like powerful score, and the way he kind of just he gets the pulse. Everyone talks about Taylor's writing, right? But like, it's clear that his musical tastes and what he feels is appropriate work really well. So I mean, that's just Taylor for you, right?
I think of him as an architect. He is involved in every support beam, every foundation block of his shows. He's very like he has it figured out. The script is a Bible. The instruction is a Bible. Like you can do it however you want to do it, but these are the rules you follow. And it's what gives his shows a personality and a point of view and a consistency. So it's incredible to get to work for someone like that who is just a single vision, and you don't have to worry about putting it through filter of 10 different people in different roles. It's just one person's vision, so it's great.
And we talked about earlier about what people think of music and shows, right? But I feel like your music is greatly appreciated by fans. I mean, just read the comments; like they're really appreciative of of the score of Mayor of Kingstown. You'd see it all over the place. So as a composer, that's got to, I mean, for people to appreciate in 2023 a musical score in a show, that's great.
I feel really lucky. It's also really interesting what resonates with people. I got really sad news about a high school friend when I was younger, passing away. And when the day I got that news, I sat down and I wrote a piece of music. I was working on Mayor of Kingstown, and I sent Taylor 4 or 5 things and said, and that was one of them. And I didn't tell him anything about it. I just sent it to him. And he contacted me and said, whoa, okay, these are great, but what's that one? And it's amazing that somehow that little DNA of what I was feeling somehow worked its way into this little piano melody, sent it to him, and he picked up on it. His radar picked up that there was something there. So it's amazing when it happens with him. It's even more amazing when fans have that same connection to things. And mathematically, there's no equation that explains why that happens. It's just something almost spiritually embedded in it. And I love it when you hear that it translates.
Yeah. I love the horror. I love the tense and beautifulness of the score of Mayor of Kingstown. But I also want to talk about Lioness, which is phenomenal. Special Ops Lioness. I'm serious. To the Afterlife. I listened to that, Andrew, today on a loop. Like, it's just so great. Like, what a way to end a series, like on such a beautiful, beautiful piece of music.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, really. It's been such a fun show to score, and Taylor and I really wanted to make sure that the music never delineated any cultures or geography of where they were. We just kind of thought, let's take everything these characters have experienced, everywhere they've been, everything they've felt. Let's put it in a blender, and that will be the DNA that we use for everything. So,
Yeah.
for example, when Zoe Saldana comes home, you don't suddenly hear Americana, you don't hear electric guitar or this music telling you you're in America. You hear what's in her head, which is this cacophony of everything she's experiencing. And then
Right.
when she's out in the field, you don't just hear world drumming and orchestral textures. You hear the sounds of home. You hear everything she's thinking about. So to have that freedom of kind of creating our own sort of eclectic sound that isn't any one thing was really fun. And putting instruments together that don't belong together, putting things together that we're able to justify it because we're not trying to make the music resemble a culture. We're trying to make the music resemble all of the colors of the kaleidoscope that have come into her head, and they're all rearranged now. So yeah, it's been great.
Your music adds to what's the lead character who the one that's on the screen, not Zoe. Oh my God, the name is
Cruz, the
yes,
recruit.
yes,
yeah.
So what I love about that is the way the music adds to her. But what I love, what Taylor and everybody else did, was she always looks beat up in the show. Like, so if you watch a movie or a show sometimes and somebody gets shot or beat up, next episode or 5 minutes later, it's all cleared up and it's all. I loved how from start to finish, she is beat to hell because that's exactly how she feels. And that's exactly what kind of her role is. So from that creative point with all the cinematography and the music, I just love how they left her looking beat to hell because that's exactly how one would look going through what she went through. Is that an accurate point, you think, Andrew?
100%. And what I love about the storytelling, and I don't think this will spoil anything for the characters, but it's almost like Zoe's character was her at one point. Yeah. So the score, although the score is really through the eyes of Joe, who's played by Zoe Saldana, but also Cruz, the recruit, right. and it's almost like the evolution of the musical themes. Whenever we hear it on Joe, it's here, and when we hear it on Cruz, we get to hear the origin story of what made Joe into who she is now. Because although they're really butting heads throughout the show, they have so much in common. They are really experiencing the same thing. They're trying to juggle real life with this massive task that they've been given by the U.S. government and responsibility to really protect us. So it's there's a lot going on in the show, and I think Taylor does a great job to pull it all together.
Yeah, what a burden and a sacrifice to do what they do. We talked about the eclecticness of your music, the kindness of strangers, mourning. What a lovely piece of music that sounds like it's right out of the 19th or 18th century, right? We talk about how different your scores are. There's a great example of that. Like, beautiful score.
I was so lucky to work on that film. Lona Scherfig, a director famous for An Education. She was Oscar nominated for that film. Mm-hmm. I think she was first kind of brought into the spotlight with Italian for Beginners, a film years ago, an indie film, great film. And she was so brave in how we talked about the music, because it's a movie about people who are homeless, are struggling with all these terrible, abuse. They're all victims. They're all going through these horrible moments. And the bravery of her to say, let's score them with beautiful music because they deserve beautiful music. They can appreciate beautiful music, right, the same way. We shouldn't just give them darkness. They deserve the beautiful music as much or more than anybody else. So it was a really clever way to score it. And the score is really in the show. I don't know if you've seen the film, but in the film, all of the characters don't know each other initially. But they all share in common that they don't call it Carnegie Hall in the film, but they can hear the orchestras playing in Carnegie Hall from outside, and they always pause and listen and appreciate it. So Lona's idea was, if the score sounds like it's Strauss or sounds like it's this music, and we actually use that score coming from the hall that's playing, actually, that the characters are actually hearing, and then the residue of that they retain to score their life. It's kind of amazing. So what an amazing excuse to write that kind of music, and real pleasure to get to work with her.
Underrated film, really good film.
Thank you.
The next and last one I'll bring up, a great score, and another, I think, underrated film is The Space Between Us. I think it's a really clever. It's a movie that is of definitely tugs on the heartstrings, but again, your eclecticness, is that's a word, shines again because I'm going to say it's not like this, but it's for people to put a picture or a sound in their mind. It's very like the Martian-esque kind of soundtrack. It's very, sci-fi-ish. It's a really great score and a really underrated movie.
Thank you. I think so too. A really gifted director, Peter Chelsom, and writer.
Big time.
I remember seeing with my wife the film Serendipity many years ago in the theater and thinking, if I could only ever work with someone like that. And so to get to work with him was such a pinch me moment and a full circle, and really smart director when it comes to music, very intelligent on how music works. And I loved working on that film. And I loved the idea of, we approached the score kind of thinking of all of the instruments that we're used to. Here you have a main character, this kid who grew up on Mars, and he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't know what water is. He doesn't know what it's like to walk around without a helmet on. He comes to Earth as a teenager, and it's all new to him. So our thought was, let's approach the music that way. Let's take all the social conventions away from what you expect music to be, and even the way you play instruments, and picture them like he wouldn't know how to play the instrument. So I could write something on the instrument in the way that he might approach it, instead of, for example, with a guitar, instead of 3 chords, you just hand a guitar to someone who has no idea how to hold it and see what you can do with it. So you're picking some of my favorites. Those are great films.
Oh, I love them, and it's music that and I practice what I preach. I listen to this either if it's not available in the iTunes and I can't buy it, I will certainly listen to it on Spotify. So every composer I have on, I'm a fan of their work. That's the fact, and you are certainly one of my favorites. Last 2 questions for you. What can you say about Atlas, because it looks like an awesome project?
Yeah, it's so Brad Payton, director. We were talking about this the other night. I think it's our 8th project together, which makes such a difference to get to keep working with the same person. You definitely you start where you left off on the last one in terms of your conversation and your understanding. I think Jennifer Lopez, I've always been a huge fan. She's incredible in this movie.
Great actor.
She's incredible. Sci-fi film. There's not a lot I can say about it, I don't think, without finding from the marketing team what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say. But I think it is going to, knock on wood, I think it's going to be very, very appreciated when it comes out. It's fantastic. Now, very moving, very exciting.
Will this be a movie I can see in a theater who appreciate all the work and everything people put into it, or is this going right to like a streaming service?
So it's produced by Netflix, so ultimately ending up on Netflix. Whether it ends up in theaters prior to that, I don't know. Sometimes they do that with films and sometimes they don't. So
yeah, it's I feel like it's like a 50-50 call how they do that. Andrew, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's a big film for them. So it's definitely, and I'd love people to see it in the theater for sure if they can. So it's that kind of film. You'd want to see it on a big screen.
What's the release date? Do you have that? It's a fall release date, isn't it?
I think it's next year. I don't know when. Next year. Yeah.
Okay. So last question. I've asked this of a couple composers. It's the most unfair question I've ever asked composers.
Okay.
If you asked me this question, I could not answer it. But let's say you're on a deserted island. You only can bring one piece of music with you. I'm going to give you 2 names. Whose work are you taking with you? Hans Zimmer or Thomas Newman?
Thomas Newman. I love them both. Them both. But one of I nowadays I don't listen to a lot of scores. Road to Perdition, the music makes that movie for me, and his score to that is just epic. It's so incredible. So that's the score I take.
That movie wraps its hand around your heart, and the score just drives that thing, Andrew. And the fact that, and I've said this before, that he's 0 for 15 for Academy Awards for his music is a joke. Like, that is ridiculous. Nobody ever talks about that. Everyone was talking about Leo's streak before he won for Revenant. But like, are you kidding me? One of the greatest composers of our lifetime is 0 for like 15 or 16, and everyone's okay with that? Okay.
Well, the amazing thing, so look at his scores and then look at the impact. I mean, he and Hans and John all have this in common. Look at the impact they've had on the evolution of scores, of sounds, of musical narration, of screens. It's amazing. Yeah, I was just saying I know Hans, and he's just a sliver behind Thomas Newman on what I would take to the island. He's also amazing.
See, every day I convince myself, like I go on a Hans Zimmer kick. I'm like, I would take Hans Zimmer, and then I hear Thomas Newman. I'm like, I hear Road to Perdition or Shawshank or something, and I'm like, I got to go with Thomas Newman. It's like I can't. It's a ridiculous question, but Andrew, thank you so much for giving me so much time, and I'm really a big fan of yours. And I think of all the great composers I've had on. I just love the way your work. It doesn't ever sound the same, and I think that's a great thing because I feel like you can fit in any genre at any moment, and that's a pretty wonderful thing, I think, Andrew.
Well, I really appreciate that, Derek. It's a pleasure to be on here, and that's a huge compliment. So thank you for saying that.
Looking forward to Atlas. So thank you so much, Andrew.